Yeah. So good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you for joining this session. We have a very exciting topic which is lined up. I have great pleasure in introducing Krishna Bodanapu. Krishna is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at Cyient. Krishna holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Purdue University, and he did his master's degree in business administration from the Kellogg School of Management, Northwestern University. All of you know that Kellogg has been a great partner to ISB. Krishna is responsible for the strategic direction of the company and creating value for all the stakeholders. And he has got a lot of experience. In fact, prior to joining Cyient, he also worked in California, San Jose, with one of the leading manufacturing company. And what is interesting about Krishna is he's somebody who is passionate about different areas of management. He got a lot of knowledge on sales, on marketing. He did prior to coming to India, he actually did for Science key account management in Europe. So I'm sure you will find it very, very interesting. And Krishna contributed significantly to Science growth in terms of margin, in terms of revenue, in terms of new customer base, and also creating customer satisfaction. I remember, several years back before joining ISB, once I was in Paris during one of the air show, one of the senior persons from Bombardier had met me, and they were talking about their experience of interacting with Krishna in particular and Cyient in general, and that they find the organization to be a great organization. Well, in addition to his role at Cyient, he's the chairman of CII for the Telangana chapter. And not long back, on 27th and 28th August, I had the opportunity actually to see how he drives his engagement with government, with industry professional, and kind of contribution he actually makes to promote industry's competitiveness, to attract investment to our country, and to promote international relations, and overall, contributing to the betterment of the society. Now, before presenting to all of you Krishna, I want to share at least three anecdotes. I must tell you that when I interacted with him sometime in 2014, 2015 in Paris in one of the air show, the way he engages with the top executives, right? There is a lot that you can learn from Krishna. He has been very passionate about new technology. One of the topics that he's very passionate about is, in addition to his business and professional activities, how India can improve female labor force participation rate in the manufacturing sector. In fact, Krishna has agreed that ISB and Cyient would work on this topic. As you know, India is the worst among the G20 countries as far as female labor force participation rate is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, Krishna's topic is going to be digital disruption in manufacturing opportunities and risks. And please feel free to type out your question. Krishna has promised that even if we do not find time, so he's going to bucket time for question answer. Please type out your question, and if he has not answered all the question, he promised that he will ensure that all of you get the responses from us, and we'll reach out to him after the session and share all the question with him. So I present to you Krishna. Krishna, over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Chowdhury. That was a overwhelming introduction, probably more than I deserve. And I will also say that Professor Chowdhury is also pretty good at sales because he just oversold me, and hopefully I will be able to do justice to what he said over the last few minutes. But having said that, I'll first want to thank Professor Chowdhury and ISB for giving me this opportunity, but also thank all of you for being here. I know on a Friday evening, being in a session is not usually the easiest thing to do. So I hope I can do justice to the time that you're investing this evening. So the topic that I'll speak about is digital disruption in manufacturing, opportunities and risks. And what I want to do over the next, I'll try to do this in about 20 minutes, so we have half an hour for any questions you may have that I could answer. But the way I look at it is it's a very, very interesting time for manufacturing. I mean, manufacturing as we know it has been changing significantly. But this pandemic and the whole disruption that has been caused over the last about 9 months now, I guess, the disruption that has been caused over the last 9 months has also meant that in manufacturing sector, we've had to change and evolve at a much more rapid pace than we ever did in the past. And therefore, I think as leaders, as managers, and as practitioners, the onus is on us to see how we can really adopt technology into manufacturing, and we adopt it quickly, efficiently, so we can actually make things a lot better. So and I'll tell you a little bit about what we do to set this into context, but I'm therefore very passionate that, while on, and to me, the pivotal date in this whole crisis is March 21st, because I think that's the day the lockdown was announced, and I think 23rd it came into force, at least in India. So, when you look at things on March 23rd, the way the world looked and the way that it's looked today are very, very different. And I feel they're also different because what technology has taught us and what technology has enabled us to do, I don't think it would have been possible, or anybody would have said it would have been possible at the beginning of in March even of this year. So therefore, I believe, and I'm very passionate, therefore, that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And for us, for all of us who are, I'm sure, given the context that ISB also has a lot of manufacturing programs, of course, Professor Chowdhury comes from that background, but I believe that as engineers, as practitioners of engineering, and of course, ultimately as business leaders, this adoption of technology is an opportunity that's only going to come once in a lifetime. And therefore, the more effectively that we can adopt technology, I believe, the businesses and society will function much, much better. So let me stop there with the introduction. I will go to the presentation and try to talk through these things in a little bit more detail. As a quick agenda, I will talk about Cyient. So to give you a little bit of a background on who we are as a company and what do we do. Then I'll give you some examples of digital technologies in action, primarily in manufacturing, but just in general in sort of in our day-to-day workings, in our day-to-day life. I'll talk about the impact of this technology, how it is changing our lives, how we conduct business, how we conduct ourselves. But also I want to spend a few minutes on what are the keys to win. And I think it's very appropriate that we're at least in the virtual confines of a very a fantastic organization like the Indian School of Business, because it's institutions like this that can really enhance and accelerate these keys to win. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail before I conclude. But also in conclusion, I do want to talk about some of the challenges that we're going to face and what are some of the things that we can do to address these challenges. If I may quickly talk about Cyient, we are one of the largest independent engineering providers in the world. What I mean by that is we support various companies in various industries, primarily in manufacturing related industries, to design their product, also to manufacture their product. But we work across the value chain. So we do things from the semiconductor itself. That means we do a lot of work on the chip design. We also work with TSMC on fabricating some of the smaller chips that we've designed and so on and so forth. Then we help companies actually build the whole product. And I start with the chip because more and more as products are becoming digital, the chip becomes more and more important because that's where the data is really captured before it goes on to be analyzed and actioned and so on. So, we start from there. We help companies build the whole product around it, the design of the product. And so we do a lot of mechanical design, electronics, embedded software, et cetera, et cetera. And we also have capability to manufacture some of the products that we design. We don't do it at a very large scale, and we don't do it at a very large, or we don't do it if it is a very large volume, but wherever there is specialized manufacturing, especially highly complex, low volume things we're able to make, such as safety critical electronics, precision mechanical components, prototypes, and so on and so forth. We work across the spectrum of industries from aerospace to rail to semicon. We have about 14,000 employees today, of which I'd say about 13,000 or so would be engineers who are supporting the engineering value stream of various organizations. So like I said, we work across this value spectrum. We help design, we help build, which is manufacture, and we help maintain. And I'll leave this with you because as I talk about the presentation, you'll see that in each element of this product life cycle, there are more and more elements of digital that are coming in, which really make things easier to design, easier to manufacture, and ultimately easier to operate and maintain. So we work across this value chain, and that value chain is quite important in the sense, or understanding that value chain is quite important because we really need to figure out solutions that address this value chain. This is just a list of customers. We work with some of the largest OEMs and large system integrators across the world, and I'll just leave it at that. But I'll say I put this slide just to say, look, we are a credible engineering company. We are a credible manufacturing company that knows what we're doing, and therefore, I hopefully it gives me a right to present some thoughts to you for your consideration in terms of how digital is impacting these industries. So first, I just want to talk about the evolution of manufacturing. And I found this to be very, very interesting. Again, this is a little bit of it is based on my my anecdotal information, if I may. But I think but having said that, though, I've checked with a few people that agree that these numbers are approximately correct, I would say. But if you look at in the 1940s, any large manufactured system, aerospace, automotive, power generation, all those systems, 80% of the content was mechanical, maybe 20, 30% was primarily at that point electrical. I think electronics obviously hadn't even come in. Then, we have gone from that to in the 80s where electronics started coming in, electrical started, maybe increasing a little bit, but mechanical started coming down. Today in 2020, and this number, for example, is something that is a true number. I've actually gotten this from some of our customers. But today, if you look at that same content, 30% is mechanical. Electrical is maybe 20%, but electronics is now the biggest spend. And lastly, the digital aspects are starting to come in. And again, this is not necessarily in the cost of the product, because in many cases, the cost of the product mechanical would still be high, but this is where the customers are putting their money in the engineering spend when they manufacture a product, right? So what a number of the customers that I've talked to are talking about is by 2040, the spend on digital will now be as much as the spend on mechanical engineering or on electrical engineering. So definitely not great news for us mechanical or electrical engineers. I myself am an electrical engineer, but this is the reality of how the spend and where the value in engineering is changing. And if you look at it, all of this is driving towards how do we, embed digital technologies into the product, and how do we make sure that because there are these digital technologies, the experience of the product is improving. So that's why I believe, when the Industrial Revolution came, and we started seeing products like automobiles or power generation equipment, the focus was on how do we build it, and the focus was on the product itself. Everybody wanted to build a product that functioned well, that functioned efficiently. Today, in the digital revolution, it's more moving away from what are we building to how are we building it, right? A lot of the digital that we will talk about in the next few slides is really getting the data that makes the manufacturing, the operations more efficient. Or also it's the experience. Ultimately, the focus is now shifting from, this is what the product does to this is the experience that you would get. The quick analogy that I will use is, today, if you look at something like a car, right? Nobody is talking about the engine of a car. I mean, I remember growing up, even in sort of the 80s and the 90s, when you saw a new car, the first question you asked is how much horsepower does it have? What is the acceleration? Today, that's not really the case. Today, you're asking these questions of, does it integrate with my iPad? Can I control it? Can I control the radio with voice commands, or can I control the radio with gestures? So it's not, even if you look at a car, right? And this is, I see, teenagers today asking these questions of, can my iPad integrate with the car? Not, how much horsepower does it have and what is the acceleration? And of course, if you go one generation before, the famous Kitna Deti Hai Re used to come in. And for those of you who didn't understand, Maruti Suzuki had this ad where Indians are obsessed with how much mileage do you get no matter what we are buying. So my point, therefore, is this shift is happening. And I think really the onus and the impetus is on us to make sure that we appreciate this shift and really focus on the opportunities that this shift is going to create for us. This is an actual numbers that I got from Continental, who are one of the largest tier 1 suppliers in the automotive sector. They obviously supply to all the large OEMs, especially German OEMs. But if you look at the breakdown, right? In the 60s, the car was, it correlates to what I talked about. It was all hardware, right? Then slowly software started coming up in a car. And if you look at it, what they're saying is that by 2030, for example, hardware is only half the car. Software and SaaS, in this case, SaaS is a proxy for digital, because they are talking about services like real-time car monitoring, real-time data analytics, etc. But look at how the shift is happening. A car, 30% of a car is now, 50% of a car, if you look at this, is now becoming software, digital, etc. And the ultimate function of a car, if you really look at it, is to get you from place A to place B. But it's not that anymore. It's how efficiently, comfortably the car gets you there. So this. I'll park this here, but I'll say the vehicle is being transformed to actually a software-defined product. And that, I think, to me, being in the broad manufacturing sector, is a wake-up call to say, look, there is going to be a significant adoption of digital software in our sector, and we better get ahead of the curve rather than behind the curve. So if you look at digital in action, as consumers, you look at, and I won't go through these in any great detail, because I think we, again, thanks to the pandemic in the last 7 or 8 months, we experienced this in every in every form. But look at the pivot. I'm sorry, the chart at the left is not very clear, but basically what it is it's the online sales in the US, and they have been increasing at a dramatic pace. It followed a fairly linear curve, and because, of course, of the challenges because of the pandemic, there's been that pivot, and that pivot is continuing. And today, if you look at Amazon, is worth more than all the other retailers in the US, for example, combined, right? And you look at even the valuation of somebody like Reliance in India is, while their cash is still being generated by the oil sector. The excitement, which is really where the potential is the new sectors, their retail sector, their, of course, the telecom sector, but not just telecom for telecom's sake, but really about how it's going to transform how we do day-to-day stuff like retail, and I'm sure there's going to be other things like healthcare, entertainment, media. So that's one aspect I want to highlight. The second thing is business. Again, every business that we're talking about is adopting digital. I mean, we work with I'll just give you one example. In agriculture, we work with with India's largest fertilizer company. We've created this solution where a drone flies, a drone captures the crop. I mean, looks at the color of the leaves in a crop, and it will actually say, okay, where is the problem? Where is the pest? And another drone goes and delivers just amount of pesticide at that spot and hopefully kills the pest. Now, why is that important? Because if you see a field, let's say a farmer even, and of course, that's a whole different conversation, but in India, an average farmer is 2.5 acres. But even if you take a 2.5 acre farmer who's planted, let's say, tomatoes, pest, if it starts in the middle of this field, typically he won't see it till it comes to the end, because he doesn't necessarily, especially if he doesn't have to water it, won't go into the middle of the field, or might not go every day to the middle of the field. So those are the kind of things where in business there is digital in action and digital is being used. I mean, who would have thought that in northern Telangana in India, farmers are now using digital technologies to help do this better. Of course, there's governments, and again, there's many examples of that. So those are, I'd say, some of the, my point is every sector is being impacted. I don't want to say is being dramatically transformed, because that's an overstatement, I'd say. But I think every sector is being impacted, and every sector has a play for digital that we really need to embrace. And I think that's where the opportunity is. And that's where I really get excited, because, this is a once in a lifetime transformation, or a once in a lifetime opportunity. And we really need to embrace that opportunity and be successful. If I may just talk about impact of technology, and you look at, again, every single area is being impacted in some way or the other, be it connectivity, healthcare, automation, energy. These are things that are being impacted over and over by the availability of these technologies and the adoption of these technologies. I'll just use some of these examples. I told you about drones and how we're using drones in agriculture. Now, there's a number of examples where body parts, especially, of course, it's still not, organs are not being printed, but sort of, if I may say, the mechanical body parts like bones and joints are being printed, are being customized. I mean, teeth is another thing. I mean, if it's quite a painful process to get your teeth, for example, replaced, because the dentist used to have to take a cast and then, make the teeth. For example, last time I went to a doctor, it took me 3 tries to get the right crown, so on and so forth. Whereas today, with precision measurement, doctors, especially in this has started in the US, are able to print crowns which fit perfectly, and that reduces. And again, that comes to the experience, right? The experience, or the experience of going to the dentist 3 times, the waste of resources, be it time or even money, is taken away, because we can use technology effectively in a field like that. So the reason why I'm talking about some of these fields is I feel that the adoption has happened at a very interesting pace, and the adoption has happened in an area where we don't expect it, but people can deliver immense amount of value by adopting such technologies. You look at, I'll just give you one last example. You look at, thanks to, if you look at remote surgery, right? Remote surgery was not possible so far because the latency is such that you can't do surgery on a mobile network or any network. But thanks to 5G latency comes down to a point where a doctor sitting in, let's say, in a large city in India can operate on a patient in a little village because, with the latency, of course, speed has been there. And if you look at 5G, the differentiator of 5G is not necessarily the speed, it's really the latency. With that latency, you can perform remote surgery. For a large client who's a mining operator, we have, we've done this, we've autonomized some of their trucks, and each truck carries 150 tons or so of earth, right? Either basically iron ore or the iron ore, and both of them cross each other at one point with less than 2 centimeters of gap, because that's how the sort of the mine is laid out, right? But they're able to do that because, and they do that with, and it's a pleasure to see, because when they cross, it just goes, it's almost like they're on rails, because they're coordinating with each other on a very localized high-speed network. They're coordinating with each other so they can pass each other. If there is an accident and it's actually then drops off 200 or 300, it's an open pit mine, so it'll drop off a few hundred feet. So those are the kind of things that become possible because of the adoption of digital technology. Also, I'll say, the Great Depression of 1929, coming out of it, these were some of the industries that, we all are actually a part of. I mean, be it automotive, electronics, the manufacturing sector, energy, etc. I believe that the recovery from this virus will be the digital technologies. I mean, if you unfortunately, I think there might not be many people who remember what happened at that revolution. But if you look at if you read some of the books that were written around that time, what you will see is, coming out of that Great Depression, these were the industries that became to the forefront. Coming out of this virus situation, I think the industries that are really going to do well are the industries that are based on digital technologies. Also, I'll say the adoption. This is another very interesting slide I found, and I'm sure this is taught in various courses in various formats. But look at it, right? I mean, it took 68 years for airlines to get to 50 million users. It took a few days, for Pokemon Go to get to 50 million users. But also, actually this morning, I happened to speak to to somebody who's a very senior executive in one of the largest aerospace OEMs. Now, to build on the top left-hand corner, to build a new aircraft platform, it'll cost anywhere from $30 to $40 billion. It'll take literally hundreds of thousands of people, engineers, some of the best manufacturing brains in the mind. You'll build large factories, etc., etc. But to build what's on the bottom right, it'll probably be a few kids wearing shorts in a campus like ISB who write up the code for a few days. Maybe I'm obviously trivializing it, but the adoption of how things can be developed, and the reality of how things can be developed, is changing more than ever. So therefore, I'll talk about the conclusions here in a minute, but keep in mind this whole issue with adoption, which is happening faster and faster, because we're going from a very sort of mechanical world at the top left to a very digital world at the bottom right. So what are the keys to win? Taking away from all this, I'll say, I have 3 or 4 things that I want to talk about. I think the first is innovation. I think, innovation, the way I look at innovation is not creating new things. That's invention, right? And invention is a different game, and a different, inventive models have a very different economics and a very different mindset. Whereas innovation is taking technology, taking things that exist, and making them work in unique ways so you can deliver very unique, effective, efficient outcomes, right? So I want to place that saying that, look, invention is one thing, and it takes some great minds to invent things, but I think all of us could be very innovative in how we do things. And it is just, I would say, even a conference like this is a good example of I mean, I'm not trivializing innovation, but I'm saying that, look, earlier, Professor Chowdhury would have tried to get me to ISB. He would have sent me some dates. Invariably, I would have said I'm traveling. It would have taken us a year to come to a conference, come to a conclusion on a date. But today, thanks to Zoom, it's a very innovative way in which classes are being delivered. I see my children studying in school today I find that it's a very, it's an innovative way, because you're just taking technology that exists. They're still teaching, but they're having to do some clever things. I mean, for example, exams are being administered where a question is flashed and answer has to be provided within a certain period of time, camera has to be turned on, and so on and so forth. So that's, to me, that's it's a small example, but it's a small way of how you can use the technology and things that are available at your disposal to still because I would have thought doing exams online is impossible, but it seems to be an effective way. So my submission, therefore, is the way I look at innovation is take risks, but take calculated risks. Be patient, be open to ideas. Just every day, let's think about how can we do things that we're doing slightly differently, right? How can we adopt technology? How can we change the process, whatever it might be, to do things slightly differently? Because if you build that mindset into your organization, the outcomes are going to be very, very significant. And we see that where, we have something called the idea tree, for example, where anybody can paste an idea on there's a diagram of a tree. So, and there's these little pieces of paper which are shaped like leaves that are there. So somebody will write an idea, stick it on a tree. Now, some ideas will become, I think from leaves, they become flowers. From flowers, they become fruits, right? That is, they've actually been worked on. But okay, 90% of the ideas are, non-inspiring, if I may say that. But once in a while, you really get a very interesting idea that we've actually, from that idea tree, we've actually filed 14 patents because of how things developed. Of course, there's a lot of work that needs to come. But look at innovation. Look at how can we do things slightly differently, consistently, because we don't need to invent. If we do this, when you start, when you end, you have a very different product that helps you do things a lot more effectively. The second thing is speed. This was a very interesting statistic to me, that the average lifespan of an SMP, which is the main constituent, as many of you probably know, in the US stock market, was 90 years in 1935, is 14 years in 2010. It's probably even shorter today, right? That means we have to do, we have to be, we have to pay credence to speed. We have to take ideas quickly and develop them and deliver them. Fail quickly, move on. And I think the biggest skill in this is the ability to know when we were wrong, so we can drop an idea, not chase, don't let the ego get in the way. Don't chase, good money with bad money. Bad ideas happen all the time. We just need to acknowledge, learn a lesson, and move on. So speed is, to me, a very essential element. The next thing is entrepreneurship. And I feel that's where, institutions like ISB can or already do and can continue to play a significant part, because we do need entrepreneurs. And the definition of an entrepreneur, in my opinion, is somebody who sees an opportunity where nobody else sees an opportunity. Those are the people who really become successful as entrepreneurs. So the ability and the need of the hour today, I believe, is entrepreneurship, because unless we really create these great creators of capital, we won't really be successful with solving the problems that face us. And the last thing I'll say is learning, right? It's great to be here, and I'm sure a lot of you are very successful in your careers, are in sort of an evolved stage of your career, but you're still taking the time to study at ISB. And I think that, to me, is a very, very important thing, because what you learn today coming out of a university with a degree is probably going to be, I don't want to say useless, but I'll say will be less relevant 5 years, 10 years from now. And for us to be successful, we need to keep that mindset of continuous learning And unless we continuously learn, and unless we have that open mindset to say, I know what I know, but that's not enough. If we say, I know what I know, and that's all I will know, then I think that's the end of us as professionals. So therefore, I think the avenues for learning are more than ever, and really the onus is on us to learn. So in conclusion, I want to say a few things. One is, I'll say the first thing is the challenges of the digital world. I think one is the social inequality that it is creating. And I feel that, especially in a country like India, this is a very real problem, right? The fortunate children today are learning in schools, are learning using iPads and computers and what have you digitally. But what about the less fortunate children? They don't have, we support a lot of schools, and we support schools in which about 10,000 people, 10,000 children study. And we did a quick survey, and we found that, about 1,500 children didn't even have access to an analog television, right? And because we were trying to see what are the methodologies we could use to deliver education. Whereas, I see on the other end of the spectrum, the fortunate children have an iPad and an iPhone and an I this and an I that, and they're going through their classes. So this is going to create a very, very significant challenge if we don't address it. And that is something that we all have to be aware of and be vigilant about. The second thing, of course, is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is going to becomes more and more critical going forward. It's all about connected, but connected also means that there's millions of people who are now connected to you digitally. I mean, you connect to you connect your bank account through an app on your phone. Your phone is connected to the network. There's 300 million people that are connected to the network. Now, all of a sudden, of course, it's not as simple, but there is a path to your bank account, for example. So I think that's something that we need to be worried about and work on. Next thing I would say is that 24/7, we are living in a connected world. I think that works well for some people. I still have colleagues who will wake up in the middle of the night and check email on their phones. But I think that also is not a very healthy lifestyle. And that's creating significant issues on the next point, which is just mental health, right? I mean, we're living in a world where there is no disconnecting. There is, I met somebody who went on vacation for I think maybe it was 2 weeks, and I must have spoken to him at least 7 times in those 2 weeks, and I must have seen him because obviously now a lot of it is Zoom calls, etc. And I asked Pierre that why did he do that? He said, "Look, there is a meeting, I can't say no," and I had to be. So that's again possibly into the next point is that blurring of lines between professional and work. We used to wake up, drive to the office. That was a clear break that now you're in a work mode, and drive back. That was a clear break that you were in a home mode. Today, you wake up and if you're fortunate, you have another room. If you're not fortunate, you have a desk in your room. And if you're even less fortunate, you just sit on the bed and work. So that blurring is going to become quite important, is going to become quite a concern. And lastly, and I think there was a question on human capital, I think it's that ability to learn. We need to create this, people have to learn to be successful. And but not all of us are good learners, or not everybody has that ability or the mindset to really learn continuously. So making sure that we don't leave people behind, again, a little bit to the social inequality, but, not everybody is as smart as we think we are, right? So we have to make sure that pace of learning is something that we're not penalizing people for, and penalizing people and creating an environment where people can still learn, and creating an opportunity for people to learn, right? So that is something that's going to be very important. Otherwise, we're going to leave large sections of the society behind. Lastly, of course, I talked about speed of change. Things evolve at a rapid pace, and if we don't evolve at the same pace, we're left behind. And again, speed is something that not everybody is very good at. So we need to make sure that we are also aware of the challenges that the speed of change will create. So therefore, I'd say it's this optimism with realism, the balance. I think it's called I forget what it's called, this Shockley Paradox, that, on one side, you have to be incredibly optimistic, and I would say forward-looking. That is, how the world is evolving and what are the opportunities that we have. All right. But at the same time, we have to look at the problems of today and making sure that the problems of today are addressed and solved. Last thought I'll leave with you is, I think in this whole world of digital evolution, there's a lot of technologies that are coming up. But we have to, and many of us as engineers see technology and get very excited about it. There's nothing wrong with it. But I would say, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the problem that we're solving? And if a technology doesn't solve a problem but creates a problem, it's not a good technology, or somebody is not using it in the right way. So let's focus, and it comes back to one of the first slides I had. We need to focus on not what it does, but the experience it creates. What is the problem? Can we monetize the problem? Will somebody pay for it if I solve this problem? Because day in and day out, and we invest quite a bit in startups also, I see so many companies that have the coolest technology, but are not solving any problem. They're just there because they're cool. Right? That's something that's not going to be very efficient way of running our lives and businesses going forward. So with that, I will stop, but I'll just use this opportunity also to thank and acknowledge the people who really have made our lives so much easier in the last 9 months, the health workers. Because of the work that they've done, I think a lot of us have been extraordinarily safe and has allowed us to continue doing what we do best. So with that, I'm sorry I went a little bit over or longer than what I thought I would, but I think we have hopefully another 15 minutes for questions.
Yeah, so there are some interesting questions, Krishna, and I thought I'll read out the first one.
Yes.
So the question is from Tushar, and Tushar is telling, how should the strategy change for digital adoption in, say, OEM, Tier 1, and Tier 2 suppliers, given their general operational constraints? So how the strategy should change for digital adoption, OEM, Tier 1, Tier 2, as you move the tape. So that's one question.
I think that's an interesting question and a very good way to look at it, because I'd say, again, what is the problem that you're solving, right? If you're an OEM, ultimately, as an OEM, it's all about the customer. It's all about, so I would say an OEM would look at their digital adoption more around, two things. One is the supply chain management, and the second thing is the customer experience. Whereas if you're a Tier 1 or a Tier 2, your value add is really that you can do efficient manufacturing, make sure that the product is being analyzed when it is working, so you can learn lessons quickly, adopt them into the next version of manufacturing. So I'd say an OEM would be more focused on the supply chain, on the user experience. A Tier 1 or a Tier 2 would be more focused on manufacturability, life cycle of the product, and so on and so forth. So I'd say that would be, to me, as at least, that would be one way of looking at it. But I'd say, it really, ultimately, I feel we have to look at where is the value for us and where do we create the most value in any supply chain that we work in, and really focus on that. And in that sense, I think an OEM or a Tier 1 would look at it slightly differently.
Yeah, so I go to the next question. So the next question is somebody who has not spelled his name or her name. The question is that he or she believes that Industry 4.0 is going to be a big thing in the manufacturing industry. And he or she believes that this will disrupt the job market. And wanted to know that in future, human being will only be seen in services industries, and human being would become a scarce commodity in other industries. And I'll read out the second question also. So first question was related to Industry 4.0 and more and more machines, robots taking over, and would human being become a scarce commodity in other sector? You will see mostly human in service industry. And the next question is from Dr. Sudha. And Dr. Sudha is asking, how does digital disruption impact human capital practices, especially in manufacturing industry? Yeah, so these are the two questions.
I think these are great questions, and I'd say ultimately, the way I look at it is all this is there to make sure that human beings are being are living sort of happily, more comfortably, right? I mean, ultimately, that is the problem that we're solving. Is all this impacts us because we are the ultimate users of all this technology. We are the ultimate users of these products. Therefore, I don't think the human being becomes redundant. I mean, I think the analogy that I would quickly use is to say that look, ultimately, they said when people started using computers more and more, and especially things like the iPad came out, they said the paper industry is dead because nobody will print anymore. But what the reality is, the paper industry is now more profitable and larger than ever because more data and more more material is being created, and many people, including myself, prefer to print that material and read it, right? So what I think is, therefore, I feel that ultimately human beings will only see more opportunities because, you look at it, right? Today there is more people in the workforce than ever, and while automation has always been there, I mean, factories, look at how factories have gotten automated, right? But that has not meant that all those people became redundant. It's just that more and more of those people moved into other industries. I mean, people, instead of maybe studying manufacturing engineering, more people today, or instead of studying mechanical engineering, more people today study electronics or computer engineering. So I feel, and also to the human capital practices, I would say, we have to just be aware that things are changing and make sure that we're creating opportunities in this changing environment. Like, today we offer something like 500 courses to all our employees online. They can take it at their leisure, to on at least familiarizing themselves on the newer technologies. Because my hypothesis is, if people get familiar with the technology, then they will pick it up. Hopefully they will become experts. Those things have to be done in a more structured manner, but at least that familiarization has to happen so people know what is next. So I feel as the biggest change, if I may say, in how we manage human resources is give them the opportunity and show them the art of the possible. Because all of us ultimately have to believe, we are all ambitious. We all want to do what's right for ourselves, for our families. And therefore, if we see where the world is going, we will put in the effort to learn and be successful in that new reality.
Okay, great. So the next question is actually a very specific question. They want to know how COVID has impacted your business, and what's your view about energy, utilities, and aerospace industry? What kind of future do you see in next 2 to 3 years time span? So first is, how has it impacted your business? Second is your views on energy, utilities, aerospace.
So I'll say in our industry, we've been quite significantly impacted. Our revenue will be down about 15% or so, maybe less, about 12% or so this year. So it's a significant impact. And a lot of that is also because of aerospace. We have a high dependency on aerospace, and therefore that dependency is it's a great thing usually, but of course in this pandemic situation, it's been a big challenge. Of course, we're working through it. So I'll say, the impact has been quite significant. Now, but each industry is very different, right? I mean, aerospace industry, the impact has been very significant. I think for the industry to recover will take at least, I mean, what has happened is, that industry has fallen in terms of their spend by about 50%, but this fall has stopped. Now it will flatten out, and then it has to start growing. But I think that the pivot of that growth curve is at least 2 to 3 years away. Many things have to happen before that pivot happens. So it's at least, I would say, 3-4 years away till the aerospace industry even starts to recover, and probably 5 years by the time it fully recovers to the 2019 kind of levels. Energy and utilities is a whole different story. I mean, actually, it's quite interesting that there's so much demand for power generation, and some of the networks are not able to support that demand. I'll give you a quick example. We do a lot of network design for the network that supports the City of London, and this network has been in place for the last 60, 70 years, works fine. Today, all of a sudden, the adoption of electric cars and electric vehicles is increasing. Each electric vehicle consumes as much power as an average 1.5 houses. So now, all of a sudden, you need this network to be enhanced because and they have a rough calculation that about 20-25% of the households will buy electric vehicles in the next 10 years, which means that the demand will increase for electricity by 40%. The network won't support it. So the energy and utilities, and of course, there's a lot of things with digital also that then come into play, because more and more, thanks to obviously the very important imperative of managing climate change and its impact, people are much more conscious about the appliances, much more conscious about the usage. So if net, the energy and utilities market before COVID was also doing very well. Post-COVID also continues to do well. Aerospace, I'd say that's one industry where we are going to see a fairly significant impact, because I'll just leave you with this thought, but one of the reasons why we used to travel is to communicate, right? To have meetings, to discuss things. So today, thanks to Zoom, the need to communicate has changed quite dramatically. Therefore, the need to travel also will change quite dramatically. So I think the aerospace industry has a little bit of a rougher path ahead of it.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, we have we'll have another 5 minutes or so. So there's a question. So the earlier question was from Prakash. So the next question is from Manmohan Shetty. So Manmohan Shetty is saying, if you look at India, still the manpower is significantly cheaper, manpower cost, than Europe. So every time an employee puts up a proposal for investment in digitalization, the management looks at just savings in manpower, and it doesn't become very attractive. So any comments on this? The challenges in India, because our manpower is not that expensive, and in many organizations, manpower looks at just the manpower saved through digitalization. Your views on that?
No, absolutely. I think it's a very good point, because we have to get our mindset out of this, manpower cost and people, and look at the value, because there's some work that we do in the mapping sector, and I was reviewing it this morning. We have, with the same amount of manpower, right? We're now delivering, compared to 3 years ago, we're delivering 20x the output. Right? Now, 20x the output is because we've invested in automation and technology, right? You can't get to that 20x output if you just say, just because manpower is cheap, we will put more resources on it. You've already lost the game, right? So today, if you look at, we have to ask this question of, why does Apple do all their engineering in California? Well, because, they're not looking at that per hour rate, they're looking at the value. Right. So you have to look at the value versus just the number. I mean, and I think in one way, India has a demographic dividend, but it's also a demographic disaster today, because we think everything is so related to number of people and how to keep people employed, versus the question very simply is, can you, by only focus, so a lot of industries going forward will require, not 20% reduction, but 1/20th of reduction in cost. That can't happen just by removing manpower. That will only happen when you take a view of technology. So I think, therefore, as leaders, I would urge all of you to think about, the total ROI, not just that one line item of manpower.
Right. So here you have somebody called SSK, and they're talking about an equation saying that business performance is equal to people, process, and practice. And what happens if you introduce two other factors, that is digital and agility? How digital and agility impacts the equation, people, process, practice, impacting the business performance. So if you introduce this digital and agility into the equation, your comment.
See, I think digital and agility are really multipliers, right? In the sense that digital is, how does digital make? I mean, it'll. I think this three equation is very, very true. It will always remain the case that it is people, it is discipline process, and it is the practice and consistency, of course. But digital and agile really enhance these three things. By using digital technologies, can you make a process much better, more efficient? Right? Sorry, by using digital, can you make people more productive? So I would look at it as, people will be, digital will make the impact of people by the power of 20. Right. So these are really digital technology. Digital technology is not a solution. It is a means to an end. It's an accelerator of a solution. Ultimately, that solution is still the same. It's how we solve a problem doesn't change. The problem doesn't change or go away. It's now that we have another tool that helps us solve the problem a lot more efficiently. So I think the equation is absolutely valid and still holds, doesn't change. It's just now, digital adds a accelerating factor to it.
Okay. So the next question is, you have experience in multiple sectors like manufacturing, engineering services, and several others. So the question is, how do you see risk in manufacturing sector being different from other sectors like financial sector?
See, I think the risk in manufacturing sector, the realities of the manufacturing sector are very different, right? The imperatives of a manufacturing sector are very different. Therefore, I think the risks also will obviously be different. I think I'd say, I think maybe I need to understand the question a little bit better. So I'll just leave it by saying, look, each sector is different. And unless we really understand where is the value creation and where is the disruption, quantifying that risk might be a little bit different.
Okay, the next question is, the person is asking if they are already very experienced people, not so much aware about the emerging technologies. How do you see their, mid-career progression, and how should they engage in digital project? Any advice for that?
No, absolutely. I think it's the adoption, right? If you're mid-career, then you're possibly, really deciding about technology, deciding about adoption of technology, making the decision. You're not necessarily the programmer or the coder of a technology, but really somebody who's making decisions on technology, who's making decisions on automation, who's making decisions on investments. So my recommendation is look at it as an open mind. Ask the question, can it be done better? The mistake that we all make is we start with, can it be done for 20% less, be it time, cost, effort? Why don't you once ask the question of, can it be done at 1/20th the cost and 1/20th the time? Right. And that will open up your team's mind on saying, look, this is serious, and don't write it off. Typically people will laugh when you ask a question like that, but then, look at it from the perspective of why can't it be done that way? So you as a leader and a manager have to really, drive that discipline that people look at the why not rather than, the why rather than the why not. So I'd say, assuming as mid-career, you typically have experience, you're making decisions on investments. Look at digital, look at how digital can be adopted, look at how your organization can be better by using technology.
So there is a question from Jai Kumar. Jai Kumar is asking that you have your business, many international clients. How are you leveraging digital technologies at Cyient for business continuity and for serving your customer?
So the digital, the Zoom, or we use Teams, but look at the technology, right? The availability of technology today means that you're so much more connected to your clients. You can have a conversation like this any day of the week. We don't have to do it in person. And I would say, it might not be a complete replacement for having a conversation like this in person, but this works quite well. So I feel these technologies, like this communication technology, but also and Professor Chowdhury is obviously familiar with the collaboration tools, even in the most complex engineering. I mean, you might have an entire aircraft, which is probably the most complicated mechanical system. It's sitting on a server. There's 7,000 people working on a bit and piece, and the system is putting it together. So you have collaboration tools like this. You have collaboration tools like the EDA tool manufacturers make, the CATIAs and the Unigraphics of the world for mechanical. Those are the technologies that I think we are leveraging very effectively, because today anybody can access a server farm, and we have a server farm which I think has 1024 CPUs. Anybody can access it and fire off a job using a laptop, or somebody was joking, you could potentially do it using your phone, though I wouldn't recommend it, but you could fire off an analysis job, right? So, today, we have a server farm in Belgium, where semiconductor guys use it for some of their analysis. But our aerospace team has now started using it, because a computer doesn't know which industry it is doing. As long as it's a logical code, it will process it effectively.
Right. So we'll have the last question. So this question is from Vinay Badu. So Vinay Badu is asking that if you look at in manufacturing, you talk about digital manufacturing. But when it comes to construction, very few Indian organizations are talking about digital construction. So what government can do to give a push so that construction industry adopts digital technologies for digital construction?
No, that's a very good point. And I feel that there is some extraordinary work also being done in this sector. I've seen some of the Indian companies also adopt digital technologies in construction. For example, in the planning phase, in the like how they measure, how they do tolerances, etc. So I'd say one is that there is a lot of technology that's available. But also, for example, somebody the other day was explaining that some of the new highway projects, the government is asking that sensors be embedded in the I guess the asphalt itself, so the quality of the road can be measured, and the contractors will be paid on the quality of the road. Not, of course, they'll get a fairly significant payment today, but not just on today, but how long it lasts. Because as many of you know, and the ISB road outside your Hyderabad campus, after all the construction that inconvenienced you for 2 years, when we had a big rain, that road was clogged and cars were floating in it. So the point I'm trying to make, therefore, is if the government starts to pay on performance by saying, this is just one example, and I'm sure there's many, many others. So if the government can incentivize on using technology and therefore create the outcome that's right, because this is, you get paid as long as the road lasts, I think that's a great way that government can accelerate the adoption of technology. Similarly, digital permits, there's many ways, but this is just one example.
Right. So there's a question from somebody from JSW, Sumit. So he wanted to know, are there tools for assessing digital maturity? So Sumit, you could send me an email. I have recently done it for one of the large corporate. So if you're interested to make an assessment about digital maturity of JSW, and I will be happy to do it. Any comments, Krishna, from you? So JSW person wants to know assessment of digital maturity of their organization, how important it is.
No, I think it's very important. And I think what you said is the right thing. And there's many tools, and you probably know this better. So I will defer to you, what you said. But I think it's a good idea to get the maturity assessed, and also the readiness assessed, because you don't want to put in a bunch of tools, and then if the organization is not ready to adopt and use them, then it creates a different problem. So I would say both assessing readiness and also assessing maturity go hand in hand.
All right. So thank you so much, Krishna. It was a wonderful session. There are several other questions. We'll ensure that we share all the questions with you. And those who are connected on this session, will share the link of the video recording with all of you. And Krishna, you have been always a great advocate of digital technologies and leveraging digital for making the world a better place to live in. Thank you very much. We feel proud of you and looking forward to staying connected. For those of you who are on this call, I wanted all of you to know that Krishna is also on our advisory board of the Global Manufacturing Institute, which has been set up with MIT as an associate partner. Thank you, Krishna, for all the advice and support you give to ISB. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chowdhury. It was a pleasure. Thank you.